Alright, so in this video we're going to be setting up our Windows system so that you have all the proper software and tools necessary to go ahead and get started with coding. The first thing is, if you notice on my machine it's very black, that's because I'm using what's called a virtual machine. It's basically a blank slate. You may have a lot more icons and a desktop background and stuff like that. I do not have that, so I'm going to be using a virtual machine. It's basically the exact same thing as most Windows users, so don't worry about if my screen doesn't look exactly like yours. If you're using a Mac or Linux system, we'll cover those videos later, but for right now, let's cover what most students will use, which is a Windows machine. The first thing is, you may notice that you have some files that have an icon and a name below it. If you don't see a .txt or a anything after it, you want to turn that on so you know exactly what kind of files you're dealing with, because that'll become very important once we start dealing with file extensions. In Windows 10 and 8, it's very similar. You would just need to go down to the File Explorer, which for me in this system would be a little file folder down here. You want to go to View, and you want to click File Name Extensions and check. After you do that, you'll notice that some files have a .txt or .html or .png, etc. after it. This also means that you can rename it properly instead of having to rename the rename. If you're in Windows 7, you'll have to do it a slightly different way. Instead of checking the box that says File Name Extensions, you want to uncheck it because that one is for Hide Extensions. But for Windows 8 and 10, you want to make sure the box is checked. For Windows 7, make sure it's unchecked. Okay, now that we have our file extensions, let's go ahead and install the software you need. In this class, we're not using anything too fancy or expensive. We're actually going to be using a free text editor called Brackets. And you can actually go online. In this case, I'm using Internet Explorer. I would prefer to use something else, but this is what I have, and we'll worry about setting something else called Chrome up later. To access Brackets, you go to brackets.io. .io is a text-based TLD. We'll learn what TLDs are in Chapter 1. Now in this case, Brackets is telling me I can download Brackets 1.3. That's perfectly fine for what we need to do. If you click on it, it should have a download box in the bottom. If it doesn't, you can click Other Downloads. It'll take you to a GitHub page, and GitHub is sort of the, let's just say, a place where developers like to put code and projects and everything else. If you come to this page, you want to go down until you see the brackets release .1. whatever .msi. This is a Microsoft installation file. It is perfectly safe. If you see anything called .exe, you can download that as well. Just make sure not to download the .deb, the .dmg, or the zip. You want to make sure you download the .msi or the .exe. It's going to ask you if you want to save. Certainly save. Take a few seconds to download, run security, and then once you download it, you click Run. Alright, hopefully your system is just as fast. So the installation folder, the checks are everything's okay. Install, and wait a few minutes. Alright, Brackets was successfully installed. You can click Finish and close or minimize the browser at this point. Now, the good thing about Brackets is that Brackets allows for the installation of extensions, which makes developing a whole lot easier. So the first thing you want to do once you get Brackets up and going, you may see some code in this pre-open window, and that's perfectly okay. This is actually what we're going to be developing. Not this specifically, but this is just a good example. If you can't read any of this, don't worry. By the end of this course, you should be able to understand 99% of everything on this screen. But the first thing you want to do is make sure that we can install extensions. We need 5 for the best use of this system. So you want to go over here to the right where the little plug thingy is, click that. It'll give you the extension manager. The first extension we'll be adding is called Brackets Preferences. This will allow you to modify a few things in the Brackets system. So either type in Brackets Preferences or just the word Preferences in the search box. And this first one that's called Brackets Preferences by Conrad Lipner is the one that we're looking for. So go ahead and press Install. It's going to go fetch it and download it. Okay, if it didn't automatically install, you can click the Install button and then click Close. So now that means the brackets preferences has been installed. The next thing you want to do is type in indent guides. Okay, go through the same process, install, installation successful, good. Now for Beautify, Beautify by Drew Hamlet, good. Install, installation successful, good. Next is W3C validation. This first one by UMOXFO is the one that we want. Install. Okay, that's installed. The last one we want to install is a spell checker. You'll be very surprised how many people do not perform spell checker. So in this case, we want the Alice version. Go ahead and install that. Download dictionaries. Installation successful. Good. Okay, you are done with the extensions. If the extensions doesn't automatically close itself, then go ahead and close it and get back to here. So now that we have the extensions installed, let's get down to configuring brackets for us. The first thing you want to do is go to View and then Preferences. Now with this, we're going to be selecting the editor right here and unchecking this box. As much as we like to have the editor automatically close things for us, it can get very troublesome and very confusing very fast. So uncheck that. Next, you want to change this true word when opening to false. Make sure to retain the comma at the end because we have more items going in after that. Check the box for drag and drop text and click Save. Okay, next we're going to go to View and then Indent Guides. Very bottom. Good. All right. Next, we're going to use the Beautify, which is the wand over here. That automatically takes care of all the formatting. If you notice the items we had before, Beautify makes it a little easier to work with. You'll understand why in a later chapter. All right, the last two that we have of the W3C validator and the spell checking, you probably won't use until we actually start getting into the code, especially the W3C one. So don't worry about that until we actually get into that part. So for right now, brackets is configured to what we want. We can go ahead and close it or minimize it for the time being. And let's install our other item, which is Chrome. If you already have Chrome, that's great. If you don't, let me introduce you to Google Chrome. For this, you want to go ahead and go to google.com/Chrome and download Chrome. So if you click on the Download Chrome button, it should pop up with this asking you if you want to download this. I recommend keeping the box checked. Perfectly fine. Accept and install. Save. Run security scan. And Chrome setup is good. Run. Now this is just the installer itself. It's not actually going to install Chrome. It actually has to download that. So just run this really quick. Give it a few seconds. And once this window pops up, it says, "Welcome to Chrome. You have Chrome installed." Good. Now, that's the hard part. The one thing we want to do that connects these two together is what's called Live Preview. In brackets, if you see something on the very right, looks like a lightning bolt, this is called the Live Preview. This only works with Chrome. Now, the good thing with Live Preview is that it allows you to actually see the code you're typing and working on in a browser as it develops, which is great. But when you're actively working on the code, it can actually be very confusing because it tries to process it as you're typing, which can be very, very bad. So I recommend turning Live Preview off just so you're not distracted by what's being created. All right, so with that, hopefully you have everything set up. If you don't, please let me know and I'll try to work through your problem with you as well. And once we get into the further chapters, we'll be able to set up validation and other items. Let's go ahead and get moving with Chapter 1.